These are the late season potatoes. You guys saw the picture of the sprinkler cult that formed here while we went on vacation. These potatoes got left out, forgot about these. So they were looking nice and healthy when we left. They were looking pretty sad when we got back. I think by this time they would probably still look close to this, but I think I probably would have got another 2 to 3 weeks of bulking out of the plants if they had been watered every day in August when we were gone. So I'm thinking these might not be as big as they could have been, but we're going to go ahead and find out today. One to 10 on a scale of how difficult could I make this for myself? I went for a 10. So this potting soil is a couple years old. I've used it 2 years in a row for growing potatoes in pots. I did add a lot of fertilizer and compost the last time, but I'm just going to make new next year, so I want to dump these wherever I need compost. If you look around the outsides here, ideally the level of the soil in here is here. This is how much you lose in a year or two of just gardening. Your plants take up a lot of it. A lot of the organic matter continues to break down, so you're always adding more compost. If you want a really successful vegetable garden, you need a good constant supply of compost. One of the easiest times to add it is in the fall, but if you're making hot compost, you have a lot of source for that in the spring. So it just, whenever you have the time, you're always adding to areas like this to build it back up again. I cover everything that's not growing something in a thick pile of shredded leaves in the fall as well. That really helps keep the worms happy throughout the winter, and you'll find out you have much looser, nicer soil at the beginning of the next season if you keep a big pile of leaves on there over the fall. So anyway, let's find out what we got for potatoes. Probably not going to be anything in this bottom plug of soil. Oh, turns out there is. Let's see. I wish I could tell you what variety of potato this was. I bought it from Cherry's Farmers Market. It was actually labeled as a long season potato, like 120 days or something like that. It was exactly what I was looking for. I wanted to harvest something as close to the end of fall as I could. When the weather is getting cooler, it'll store longer. I'll pile these up right here next to the carrots. I want to say I planted these carrots in late June. One thing about carrots, you can kind of plant them all throughout the season. They do like cooler weather, so the things I'm planting right now will probably grow a little better, but this was a shady spot all summer long, so it was the best spot to try and get carrots to grow. I think they're doing relatively well. I don't have a lot of luck with carrots getting the seeds to germinate. Usually once they germinate, the carrots do well, but getting the seeds to germinate can be a bit of a pain. That was nice. What did I do that? So that's about what I expected. There's a lot of smalls in there. Potatoes are putting on most of their bulk towards the end of the season, right before those plants start to die. So between when you see flowers and then the end of the season, when the plant starts looking unhealthy, that's when it's putting on all of its mass. And unfortunately this year, they got forgotten when we went on vacation. So no lunkers probably this year. I got 3 more pots, so we'll keep at it. This loofah gourd is what's dominating all of this right now. I don't know how many of you can see them hanging. Here's one here, but this plant's literally surrounding this whole area. That's what I'm tripping over. It's what I had to move out of the way so I could have a camera sitting there. You can't see it, it's just off screen probably, but there are 2 hanging right there. They're about the size of my forearm. I've seen video where people harvest a loofah gourd that's 3 feet long. So still plenty of growth happening there. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season, what we end up with. I mentioned at the beginning that I made my own potting soil. It's mostly leaf mold. The community I live in, they do leaf pickup every fall. They have the truck going around sucking up leaves. And I kind of think it must be easier driving to my backyard than wherever it is they have to go dump the leaves, because every time I ask the city guys, hey, can you bring me, drop a couple of loads of leaves in my backyard this year? They seem pretty happy about it. They're like, sure, absolutely. So I think where they have to go normally is kind of a pain for them to get in and out of. And it's great for me because, you know, anything that the community dumps, you got to kind of be worried about if there's grass clippings in there, lawn clippings. They could potentially, if they're treating their lawn for weeds, you're not going to grow anything out of the compost you make with that. Those herbicides are very strong, especially against produce. Grass is kind of engineered or selected to be resistant to that kind of thing, but big broadleaf plants and vegetables, things like that you want to grow in your garden for food, have no chance to grow in soil made from that kind of content. So leaves, I mean, nobody's spraying herbicide on their trees, on the leaves in the summer. So fall leaves are pretty safe. You can be pretty sure that there's not a bunch of herbicides in that stuff. So I have them dump a couple of truckloads. And you know, those great big vacuums that they use, they don't shred the leaves all that well. So they tend to mat down and break down slower. So what I do is there's like a, I don't know, probably 20-yard long and as wide as the truck pile. I'll show you guys here in a month or two when they dump it. But I leave that pile there. It starts out about 4 feet tall. A week or two later, it's shrunk down in half just by the weight of the leaves, rain, snow. And then over the summer, it drops down to maybe 2 foot tall in the middle, down to nothing on the ends. And at the end of that first year, I just take a skid loader. I grab my father-in-law's skid loader from around the corner, and I just push that whole long pile up into a small, tall pile. You know, rather than being spread out like this, I just kind of run it all together and make one big pile. The second year, that breaks down into essentially this. It's loaded in nutrients. It's basically 100% organic matter. And, you know, if you can put 2 inches of compost on your garden beds, you don't need to fertilize. That is enough. So that's what I do. That's how I get most of my bulk fill for these beds. I do still make some hot compost in the spring and summer when I can, because again, I got a giant pile of shredded leaves there. So dry brown material is not a problem for me. And as I get weeds picked, vines ripped out, whatever I'm doing, when I have green waste, I set up a bin and just fill it, a little bit of brown, a little bit of green, a little bit of water, back and forth. And that'll get to 150 in a few days. Once that temperature starts dropping down, I'll take the sides off. I'll show you this too eventually. I'm rambling. But I'll do a video on how to make hot compost next spring if I don't do it beforehand. But that's what I do. I don't fertilize. The only thing, I do have some organic pelletized fertilizer that I do in these pots specifically, because potatoes are heavy feeders and there's like a limited, there's limited amount of soil for them to pull nutrients from. So I do add my own worm castings to each pot, but I also add a little bit of organic fertilizer just in the pots for these potatoes. Anyway, I got 2 more. So what happens when potatoes are exposed to sunlight for a long time? They get green. That's solanine. That's not good for you. We're not going to eat this one. I'll put it in the pile for now. You get a little bit of a green spot in one area, like you can just cut that off when you're peeling. I wouldn't even peel this though. That'd be like a soup potato. But a little bit of green you can cut off. Not that big a deal. Eat around it. But if you get a potato that is like the whole thing is green, get rid of it. That's not good for you. The sun's not good for me. It's supposed to be 93 today. I should have done this a little bit earlier. It's not ideal to have a whole bunch of just dry leaves mixed into your soil, but again, this is about the end of the year. I'm not too worried about it because there will be a lot of breakdown happening over the winter. So especially once the worms get in here. Worms really love that blanket of leaves, so they will be working that soil all winter long, breaking down that bottom layer of leaves. Whatever you put on there in the fall, you may lose a third of it. Goes from being dried leaves to being this stuff by the time you get out there in the spring. And there's one with some green on it that I will probably just get rid of. It's a decent one. As soon as I picked this pot up, I saw some watermelons. There was watermelon hiding out in between where the pots were, so I never really saw it until I moved this just now. So I am going to get a couple smaller watermelons out of the garden this year. And again, the reason I didn't get a bunch, that was my own fault. I didn't purposely didn't plant the pollinator seed that they give you when you buy seedless watermelon. You have to have a pollinator plant or you'll basically set no fruit, because the seedless flowers are sterile. So instead of planting the pollinator seed, I just planted a regular, not hybrid, not seedless watermelon, more like an heirloom variety. And it didn't germinate, and then it finally did. So about 4 weeks after I planted the first watermelon seeds, I realized that this, what was supposed to be my pollinator watermelon, what germinated there was actually muskmelon. So I didn't have any pollinator watermelon for the longest time. I planted more of that heirloom variety. Got slow germination. It did finally germinate the second time I planted it. But by that time, the first 2 plants were full grown, and that was just a seedling. So it took forever to get any flowers that could, bear any fruit. So I got one watermelon that was actually good size, right where my knee is. We ate that last week, and I got another one, maybe the size of my fist, and another one about yay big that I'm waiting for those to ripen up right now. The seedless varieties that I planted were smaller varieties. The one was actually like a personal, that's about as big as it's going to get. So we'll get a couple. Again, every year there's some failure, and as long as you learn from it and can't get upset about it, there's always next year. Every year you do it, you learn a little more, you get a little better. As long as you don't do the exact same thing and expect a different result. As long as you've learned something, going to try something a little different, then the next year has a lot of promise. There's my potato harvest. We'll get several meals out of that anyway. Again, it would have been a lot better had I not forgotten to water those while we were on vacation. There's where we just were. Here's where those potato pots are sitting. Right there's the 2 watermelon I'm still going to get this year. Now, I know they're not ripe because this one's getting close though. The closest tendril to the watermelon, which would be this one, when that's brown as a stick all the way down to the vine, that's when this is ready. Same thing with this one over here. These are really fun, but that tendril right there has a little ways to go yet. So this one will probably get a little bit bigger yet. See the problem here, right? Potatoes are in that crate. I want to spread them out on the table, let them cure week to 10 days, but they're not supposed to be in the sunlight. That blind is not doing much of a difference right now. But I have another blind. It's broke. So now I got to put my MacGyver hat on. We'll be back. Now I have some shade for my potatoes. All right, the potatoes are supposed to sit out and cure where there's decent airflow and the light stays off of them for 7 to 10 days. A lot of people recommend you come back halfway through your curing process and turn them all over. I can't guarantee I'm going to do that. So far I intend to, but it's one of those things that these will become out of sight, out of mind, and it'll probably be well after 10 days. So I'm like, oh yeah, I should bring those potatoes inside. Completely forget about doing that. So we'll see. Either way, I've grown potatoes and kept them long enough that I know that we're going to eat these before they go bad. The smallest ones will go bad first. So potato soup, potato salad, maybe even vegetable soup. Use up all these little ones. I'm not going to peel them. I'll just wash them real good, throw them right in there. Use up the tiny ones first. Or just mash them. I make mashed potatoes a lot without skinning. I'm going to find out that I didn't even need that blind to begin with because they're all going to be over here on this end of the table. But then I wouldn't get to make this funny video. I'm almost done getting all this untangled, but I should have been recording that the whole time, because stuff like this right here is why my wife comes home and goes, "Why did nothing get done today?" I promise you, stuff got done. Tedious things that like weren't on the radar for the day, like fooling with this blind for 20 minutes to get this fixed and hung up so I can dry these potatoes. Getting the potatoes harvested, that was on the list. This whole rigmarole, not so much. A bunch of ER nurses will watch this and be like, "Wow, this guy's an idiot." Stand on a rotten old picnic table. Just because we tell people don't do dumb shit doesn't mean we don't do it ourselves. Alright, does that look level to you? Oh, you probably can't see this now. Let me get one screw in, then I'll move you so you can see what I'm doing. Oh, shit.